The wind moved quietly across the open plains as evening settled over the cowboy's small cabin. Reed Mallory had just finished stacking a pile of firewood near the porch when he felt the first sharp bite of cold in the air. Winter always came early in that part of the country, and he had learned to prepare for long, silent nights. He lived alone, and most evenings passed with only the sound of the wind, the creaking of the old cabin walls, and the soft steps of his horse moving in the stable. Reed stepped inside, lit the oil lamp, and placed it on the wooden table. The warm glow spread across the room, revealing the simple life he lived. A narrow bed in the corner, a shelf with a few books, an old kettle on the stove, and a single chair beside the window. He had grown used to this quiet life after years of drifting from ranch to ranch, finally settling on this small piece of land he hoped to rebuild. Just as he was about to sit down and rest, a sound broke the silence, a soft, uncertain knock on the door. It was so unexpected that Reed froze for a moment, wondering if he had imagined it. No one visited this late. Most neighbors lived miles away, and anyone traveling would normally arrive by daylight. The knock came again, this time a little louder but still gentle, almost hesitant. Reed placed his hand on the doorknob and opened the door slowly. Standing in the dim light were three figures, bundled in worn blankets. An elderly Apache woman stood at the front, leaning slightly on a wooden stick. Beside her were two younger women, her daughters each carrying small bundles tied with cloth. Their faces were tired, their clothes dusty, and their expressions filled with quiet worry. The old woman lifted her eyes to Reed's. Her voice was soft, polite, and heavy with exhaustion, as she spoke words that immediately struck his heart. "Nobody provides us shelter," she said, almost whispering, as if she had repeated this sentence many times before, always with the same painful result. Reed stared at them, unable to speak for a moment. He had seen travelers come through the area, but never a family looking so worn out and desperate for warmth. He noticed the daughters were shivering, their hands clasped around their thin blankets. The older daughter tried to stand tall, but her trembling made it clear that the journey had been hard. The younger one held her mother's arm gently, trying to support her. Reed cleared his throat, still unsure what to say. "Ma'am, it's late. What happened to you? Why are you out here in this cold?" The old woman introduced herself as Nalin. Her voice held strength, but the cold had clearly drained her. She explained slowly that they had been traveling for days, moving from place to place, looking for anyone who would allow them to rest for even a night. They had knocked on many doors, but most people had turned them away without listening. Some had refused to open their doors at all. Reed felt a tightness in his chest as he listened. He had known about the difficulties many native families faced, but seeing it happening at his own doorstep felt different. These were real people, not stories from travelers or passing talk at the market. He looked beyond them into the night. The sky was dark, clouds drifting low, promising colder weather soon. He imagined the three of them walking through that cold with nowhere to go, their feet tired, their clothes not warm enough, their hopes slowly fading. "What brings you this far out?" Reed asked gently. Nalin explained that her small community had become scattered after months of drought. Many families had moved to look for water or work. She and her daughters had stayed behind as long as they could, but when their food ran out and their shelter became too weak to survive winter, they had no choice but to leave. A friendly rancher near the valley had let them stay for a short time, but the ranch changed owners, and the new owner asked them to leave immediately. "We thought the next place would welcome us," she said, "but every door was closed to us. People see us and turn away before hearing a single word." Reed listened quietly, feeling a mix of sadness and frustration he could not fully explain. He had always believed that everyone deserved kindness, especially those in need, but he also understood how fear and misunderstanding could make people act in ways that were not fair. The older daughter, Apache, spoke next. Her voice was calm but carried the weight of trying to protect her family. "We only ask for a little warmth. We will not trouble anyone. We help with work. We carry our share, but no one gives us even a chance." The younger daughter, Sori, kept her hands tucked under her blanket. She looked younger than Reed had first thought. Maybe in her late teens, her eyes held a mixture of hope and uncertainty, as though she expected Reed to turn them away just like everyone else. Reed felt a long silence growing between them. His mind raced with questions. Letting them in could be risky not because he feared them, but because he knew how the nearby settlements thought. Many people did not mix with Apache families, and sometimes even small acts of kindness brought unwanted attention. Reed had already heard unfriendly comments from a few neighbors who believed he kept to himself too much, but he also knew something else. Leaving them outside on such a cold night was simply not right. He took a slow breath. "It's cold," he finally said. "You shouldn't be out here. Come inside for now. There's a fire going." For a moment, none of them moved. Nolan's expression softened just slightly, as if she needed to make sure she had heard him correctly. When she realized he truly meant it, she stepped forward with a faint nod. "Thank you," she said quietly. Reed stepped aside and let them enter the cabin. As they walked in, he noticed how carefully they moved, as though trying not to disturb anything. The warmth of the room wrapped around them, and Sori closed her eyes for a moment in relief. Reed added more wood to the fire, letting the flames rise. "Sit near the fire," he offered. "Warm yourselves first." As they settled down, he noticed their shoes were dusty and worn, the soles almost rubbed thin. Their blankets were patched in several places. It was clear they had traveled a long road. He filled 3 cups with warm water from the kettle and handed them over. They accepted the cups with quiet gratitude. Both hands wrapped around them to soak in the heat. For a while, there was silence in the cabin. The kind that felt fragile, yet peaceful. Reed sat across from them, watching the firelight dance across their tired faces. The warmth softened the worry in their expressions, even if only a little. Finally, Reed spoke again. "You can stay tonight. Tomorrow, we'll see what can be done. You're safe here for now." Nalan looked at him with eyes that carried years of experience and hardship. "We ask only for shelter," she said softly. "We do not wish to burden anyone." Reed shook his head. "You're not a burden. Everyone needs help sometimes." The daughters exchanged a small look, one of relief, surprise, and quiet hope. For the first time that night, Reed saw a faint smile appear on Sori's face. As the fire continued to burn and the night grew colder outside, the small cabin felt less lonely than it had in a long time. Reed didn't know what the next days would bring, but at that moment he knew he had made the right choice. The old Apache woman and her daughters finally had shelter, even if only for one night. And Reed felt a strange warmth inside, one he had not felt in years. Reed woke early the next morning. Long before the sun rose, the cold air slipped through the cracks of the wooden cabin, reminding him that winter was close. As he pulled on his boots, he noticed a soft sound behind him, quiet breathing, calm and steady. He turned to see the Apache family still asleep near the warm fire. They looked peaceful for the first time since they had arrived at his door. The blankets Reed had given them were wrapped securely around their shoulders, and the fire's glow touched their faces gently. For a moment, Reed simply watched them, feeling a strange warmth inside. He wasn't used to sharing his space with anyone. His life had been built on long days of work and long nights of silence, with only his horse to keep him company. But seeing the family resting there, he felt something different, something that softened the loneliness he had lived with for so long. He stepped outside quietly, letting the door close softly behind him. The early morning was cold but still. A thin layer of frost covered the grass, sparkling faintly in the dim light. Reed took a slow breath, letting the crisp air fill his lungs. Then he walked toward the stable to start his chores, the same chores he had done every morning for years. Inside the stable, his horse rhythmically shifted its weight and greeted him with a gentle snort. Reed smiled and patted the horse's neck. "Easy, old friend," he whispered. "We've got some extra company now." He began feeding the animals, checking the water, and gathering fresh hay. As he worked, he kept thinking about the family and what their story might truly hold. People didn't walk through the cold with so little, unless life had become extremely difficult for them. He wished he could understand their experience more deeply, but he also didn't want to push them too quickly. Trust was something that grew slowly, especially after hardship. When Reed finally returned to the cabin, he found Nalan awake, sitting quietly near the fire, with her hands folded in her lap. Her daughters were still asleep, curled under the blankets. "I hope we did not trouble you," she said gently when Reed stepped inside. Reed shook his head. "Not at all. I'm glad you found my place last night." Nalan gave a slow nod, her eyes fixed on the fire. "Many places turned us away before we reached your door." Her voice was calm, but Reed could hear the weight of those words. "You're safe here," Reed assured her. "You can stay until you're rested." Nalan thanked him again, her gratitude clear in her quiet tone. Reed noticed she spoke slowly, choosing her words carefully, as though she wanted every sentence to hold meaning. A few moments later, Apache and Sori woke up. They sat up straight when they realized Reed had already started the day. Both of them worried they had slept too long. "We should help," Apache said quickly, as she stood and folded her blanket. Reed waved his hand lightly. "Rest first. There's time later." But Apache insisted. "We do not want to stay without helping. It is not our way." Sori nodded in agreement, her shy expression firm with determination. Reed admired their willingness. "All right," he said, "but only a little. You all still look tired." Apache and Sori followed him outside, while Nalan warmed her hands by the fire. The daughters looked around the ranch, simple, quiet, and surrounded by open land. Reed explained the tasks he had already done and pointed out what still needed attention. Apache knelt beside the water trough and began clearing out leaves with careful hands. Though tired, she worked with patience. Sori helped gather fallen branches near the cabin, stacking them neatly to dry for later use. Reed watched them from a short distance, surprised by how naturally they moved through the morning chores. They didn't complain, didn't hesitate. They simply worked with steady focus, as though helping was a peaceful routine. As they worked together, Reed noticed small details. Apache checked the horse's hooves without fear, gently brushing dirt from its legs. The horse, which normally reacted nervously to strangers, stood still under her touch. Reed raised his eyebrows. "You're good with horses," he remarked. Apache looked up briefly, her dark hair falling to her shoulders. "My father taught me," she said softly. "He said horses understand calm hands." Reed smiled. He was right. I haven't seen that mare stand so quietly for anyone but me. Apache's eyes brightened for a moment, a quiet pride appearing on her face. Sori carried another bundle of small branches toward Reed. "Is this enough?" she asked. "That's perfect," Reed said, taking the bundle from her. By midday, the sun began to warm the sky, though the air remained cold. Reed invited the family back inside, where he warmed soup on the stove. It wasn't much, just a mix of vegetables he had stored for winter, but he served it with fresh bread he had baked the previous day. The family accepted the meal gratefully, eating slowly as though they wanted to savor every warm bite. While they ate, Reed finally asked the question that had been on his mind since last night. "You said your community scattered. What happened exactly?" Nalan exchanged a quiet look with Apache and Sori. She set her spoon down gently before speaking. "There was a drought. The river near our home grew smaller each day. We tried to stay, but there was not enough water for everyone. Some families moved north. Others went south. We stayed behind until we could no longer live there." Reed listened carefully. He knew droughts had hit many parts of the region. Farmers had complained of low crops, and ranchers worried about their animals. But for Nalan's family, it was more than just a slow season. It was the collapse of their entire home. "We hoped we could travel to nearby ranches," Nalan continued, "offer help in exchange for a place to stay. But things did not go as we hoped." "What do you mean?" Reed asked quietly. "People looked at us and turned away," Apache said, her voice steady but hurt. "They did not want to hear our story. They closed their doors before we could speak." Sori lowered her eyes. "Some didn't even open the door." Reed sat back, feeling a heaviness in his chest. He had seen unkind behavior before, but hearing it from them made him realize how deeply it affected them. "You've come a long way," Reed said gently. "Too far to be treated like that." Nolan nodded. "We had almost lost hope yesterday evening. Then we reached your door." Her voice softened, carrying both gratitude and relief. After finishing their meal, Reed stood and looked out the window, thinking. He wasn't sure what the neighbors would say if they learned a family was staying at his ranch, but he also knew that doing the right thing often wasn't the easiest choice. "You can stay longer than one night," he said finally, turning back to them. "At least until you're strong again. We have space here." All three women looked up at him as though they had heard something rare, something they had not expected. Apache was the first to speak. "You would let us stay? Even with what people might say?" Reed shrugged slightly. "People always talk. But kindness matters more. And you need a place. That's reason enough." Sori's eyes softened, and Nolan placed her hand over her heart. "You give us more than shelter," she said. "You give us dignity." Reed felt a warm flush of emotion rise inside him. "Anyone deserves that," he replied. The rest of the day passed with peaceful activity. Apache helped Reed brush the horses. Sori cleaned the tools in the stable. Nolan mended one of Reed's torn shirts using fine stitching skills she had learned years ago. Reed had never had help like this on the ranch, and he found himself enjoying their company more than he expected. As the light faded, the fire in the cabin glowed once again. The family sat near it, warming their hands, speaking softly to each other. Reed sat across the room, listening quietly. The cabin no longer felt empty or echoing. It felt alive. Reed didn't know what the future would bring, but he knew one thing for certain. This simple act of offering shelter had changed something inside him. And he sensed that the days ahead would reveal even more about the family who had arrived at his door with tired feet and hopeful hearts. The next morning, Reed woke with a strange feeling in his chest, as if the rhythm of his quiet life had shifted in a new direction. For years, every day had been predictable: feed the animals, fix what was broken, ride out to check the fences, return home to silence. But now there were soft voices in his cabin. The gentle sound of people moving. The warmth of company he had not felt in a long time. He stepped outside to start the day's chores, only to find Apache already near the stable, brushing down the mare with slow, steady strokes. She looked focused, her movements calm and natural, as though she had done this since childhood. The mare leaned into her touch, peaceful in a way Reed rarely saw. "You're up early," Reed said with a small smile. Apache glanced at him briefly. "The sunrise woke me, and your horse was restless. So I thought I could help." Reed nodded. "You're good at this. She trusts you." Apache didn't answer right away. She looked down at the horse, her expression soft. "Animals listen with their hearts more than their ears," she said quietly. "They know when someone means no harm." Reed felt those words settling deeply inside him. He realized that Apache spoke like someone who had learned wisdom through experience rather than long speeches. She understood nature in a way few people did. Inside the cabin, Sori helped Nolan prepare breakfast. Reed could hear the soft clinking of cups and the quiet murmur of their voices. When he stepped inside, he found Sori stirring a pot of warm porridge, while Nolan arranged slices of dried fruit on a wooden plate. They worked together smoothly, their movements gentle and practiced. "You don't have to do all this," Reed said as he washed his hands. Sori shook her head quickly. "We want to help. Your home is warm because of your kindness. We should give something back." Nolan gave Reed a gentle smile. "You have shown us respect we did not expect to find. Helping with meals is our way of thanking you." Reed felt a warm sense of appreciation. He wasn't used to anyone working beside him, and the quiet teamwork felt peaceful. As they sat to eat, Reed noticed something else. The family looked different today. The exhaustion in their faces had softened, replaced by a quiet energy. A night of warmth and rest had clearly renewed them. After breakfast, Reed prepared to ride into town to pick up supplies. "I'll be back by afternoon," he told them. If you need anything, there's water in the barrel outside and firewood stacked behind the cabin. Apache spoke up. May we help with something while you're gone? Reed considered this. There were small tasks around the ranch, but he didn't want to tire them. If you want to gather loose branches near the creek, that might help, but don't work too hard. Apache nodded. We will take care, Sori added. We will stay close. Before Reed mounted his horse, Nalan stepped toward him. May your trip be safe, she said softly. He tipped his hat politely. I'll see you soon. Reed rode toward town, his thoughts circling around the family he had left behind. He hoped they would be comfortable while he was gone. More than that, he hoped his neighbors wouldn't cause trouble if they learned about the guests staying at his cabin. Some people in town had strong opinions, and Reed knew it. Sure enough, when Reed arrived at the general store, it didn't take long for someone to approach him with questions he didn't want to hear. A man named Carlton, known for making bold comments, stepped forward with a curious smirk. Heard you had visitors last night, Carlton said, folding his arms. Reed kept his face calm. News travels fast. Carlton raised a brow. You know how people are around here. Folks don't always welcome strangers. Reed answered simply, they needed help. That's all. Carlton shook his head. Just be careful, Reed. People ask questions when things seem different. Reed didn't argue. He knew Carlton wasn't trying to be unfriendly, just repeating what others might say. But Reed also knew something else. Doing what was right did not need permission from anyone. He gathered his supplies and rode home quickly, wanting to make sure everything was peaceful. When he reached the ranch, he saw the family working near the creek. Apache was gathering fallen branches and tying them into neat bundles. Sori was sorting small pieces of driftwood. Nalan sat on a large rock, sewing a tear in her daughter's blanket, her hands moving with practiced skill. Reed called out a greeting, and they looked up with warm smiles. While Reed stored his supplies, Apache approached him. We hope we did not do anything wrong while you were away. Not at all, Reed said. You did good work. Apache looked relieved. Later in the afternoon, Reed noticed something surprising. Apache was teaching Sori how to braid horsehair into small decorative ropes. They sat on the porch, quiet but focused, their fingers moving smoothly. Reed watched them from a distance, impressed. He had never imagined that simple horsehair could become something so precise and beautiful. You make that look easy, Reed commented as he walked closer. Apache handed him one of the braided strands. My father taught us this. It can be used for decoration or for tying things carefully. We used to make them for trade. Reed examined the braid. It was neat, strong, and skillfully crafted. This is wonderful work, he said genuinely. Sori smiled shyly. We can make more if you like. Reed nodded. As the day continued, the sense of trust between them grew stronger. Reed felt comfortable speaking with them, and the family felt safe enough to share small details about their past. Nalan told Reed about her husband, who had taught Apache how to handle horses and had taught Sori how to weave. He had passed away during a harsh winter, and since then, the family had depended on each other for every step of the journey. Apache spoke about their old home, where the river once ran strong and clear. She described how children played in the water, how families gathered in the evenings to share stories, and how life changed when the drought arrived. Reed listened silently, imagining the place through her words. Sori talked about her dreams of learning new skills someday, maybe cooking new recipes, or creating artwork she could trade. Her voice was small but hopeful, as if she carried tiny sparks of dreams she hadn't dared to share before. Reed felt honored that they trusted him with their stories. It was as though they had opened a small window into their lives, a window Reed found himself wanting to protect. But the peaceful day was interrupted when Reed's nearest neighbor, Mr. Turner, arrived at the ranch on his horse. He was an older man, strict in his ways, and rarely visited without a reason. Reed stepped outside as Turner approached. Afternoon, Reed, Turner said. Afternoon, Reed replied carefully. What brings you here? Turner shifted in his saddle. Heard you've got people staying with you. Thought I'd check if everything's all right. Reed didn't look away. Everything's fine. Turner glanced past Reed, noticing Apache and Sori near the porch. His expression changed slightly, though he said nothing unkind. He only asked, "You sure you're ready for the kind of talk this might bring?" Reed answered calmly, "I'm doing what feels right." "That's enough." Turner studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Just be careful," he said softly. "This land has room for everyone, even if some folks forget that." With that, Turner turned his horse and rode away. Reed took a long breath. He realized the days ahead might not be simple. People talked, people assumed things, but as he looked back at the three women who had found shelter with him, he felt something stronger than worry. He felt purpose. That evening, as the sky turned orange and the shadows grew long, the family gathered in the cabin again. Reed served warm soup, and the fire glowed brightly. Nolan looked at Reed and said gently, "You stood for us today. We saw it. You did not turn away." Reed felt a calming warmth spread through him. "You came to my door for help," he said. "I just did what anyone should do." Apache gave a small smile. Sori looked at the fire with peaceful eyes. In the quiet comfort of that evening, something became clear to Reed. Helping them was not just a temporary act. It was a choice that was beginning to shape his days, his thoughts, and perhaps even his future. The next few days passed gently, and Reed found his ranch slowly changing in ways he had never expected. The cold mornings felt a little warmer. The long afternoons felt less empty. And the quiet evenings seemed to hold a peaceful calm that Reed had not experienced in years. Even the animals seemed to sense the change. The horses were calmer, the chickens more active, and the cabin, once filled only with silence, now held the soft rhythm of life. Apache became familiar with the ranch's daily routine. Each morning, she stepped outside before the frost melted, tying her long hair back neatly as she prepared for work. She helped Reed brush the horses, clean their hooves, and carry fresh water to the trough. Reed watched her with quiet amazement. She moved with confidence, understanding the horse's behavior almost better than he did. A mare that usually refused to let anyone touch her stood patiently when Apache approached. Sori, meanwhile, found comfort in small tasks inside the cabin. She cooked simple meals, folded blankets, and swept the floors with light steps. Reed often saw her humming softly while she worked. Her gentle nature brought a peaceful atmosphere to the cabin. Reed sometimes caught himself listening to her quiet humming, realizing how much softer the cabin felt now that someone was filling it with warmth. Nolan spent most of her time near the fire, sewing torn clothes or weaving small decorative pieces from spare threads. Her calm presence made the cabin feel grounded, as if her quiet strength settled into the walls themselves. Reed often saw her sitting with her back straight, her eyes thoughtful, as though she was remembering long stories from her past. One afternoon, Reed decided to repair the fence near the south side of the property. Apache immediately offered to help, and Sori volunteered to bring water and small tools. Nolan preferred to stay close to the cabin. But Reed noticed she watched them from a distance with a gentle smile, as if proud of her daughters for working so willingly. As Reed and Apache walked toward the fence, Reed carried a hammer and a bundle of nails. Apache carried spare wooden planks. The wind was mild, and small clouds drifted lazily across the sky. The land felt calm and quiet, stretching out in long waves of grass. "You work hard," Reed said as they reached the fence. Apache studied the broken boards. "We work to show respect," she replied softly. "You shared your home with us. Helping you is our way of showing thanks." Reed watched her for a moment. "You don't have to repay kindness," he said, "but I appreciate your help." Apache lowered her eyes slightly. Touched by his words, she held a plank steady as Reed hammered nails into place. They worked side by side, each movement simple and steady. Reed found himself appreciating the silence between them, peaceful, not uncomfortable. There were moments when Apache glanced at the open land with a soft expression, as though she was remembering her old home. Reed didn't ask, not wanting to break her quiet thoughts. Sori arrived with a small jug of water. Her cheeks were slightly red from walking, but she smiled shyly as she handed Reed the jug. "Thank you," Reed said warmly. Sori nodded and watched them fix the fence for a moment. Reed noticed that she often stayed close to her sister, finding comfort in her presence. Whenever Reed glanced at her, Sori gave a gentle smile, the kind that came from someone who appreciated every small act of kindness. In the evenings, Reed found himself enjoying their company more and more. One night, as they sat near the fire, Nalin began telling small stories from her past. Her voice was low and steady, like a warm breeze flowing through the room. She spoke about lessons she learned as a child, about the importance of patience, and about how the land always rewarded those who respected it. Reed listened closely, drawn to her quiet wisdom. Apache and Sori sat beside her, their eyes glowing softly in the firelight. It was clear they treasured every word she spoke. "I taught my daughters to walk with gentle steps," Nalin said. "Not to leave heavy marks behind. A person's kindness is seen in how softly they touch the world." Reed nodded thoughtfully. "Your words carry a lot of meaning." Nalin smiled. "Life teaches us, if we listen." Reed felt deeply grateful for those moments of calm learning that made his cabin feel more like a home than it ever had before. But as the days passed, Reed began to sense a tension growing around the ranch. He couldn't ignore the way certain neighbors had looked at him when he rode into town, nor the quiet whispers that seemed to follow him. He didn't want to worry the family, but he knew he needed to prepare them gently. One morning, as Apache and Sori were sorting dry branches behind the cabin, Reed approached Nalin, who was knitting near the fire. "I want to talk to you about something," he said softly. Nalin looked up with calm eyes. "Is something on your mind?" Reed sat across from her. "Some neighbors don't understand why you're here. They're not unkind people, but they're cautious. I don't want this to bring trouble for any of us." Nalin nodded slowly, as though she had expected this conversation. "People fear what they do not know," she said gently. "We have felt it many times." Reed looked at the fire, uncertain. "If anyone says anything, I will stand with you. I want you to stay as long as you need." God. Crazed formation. God. And all God. God formation. God formation faces. God formation faces. God formation faces. A calm warmth spread across Nalin's face. "Your heart is steady, Reed Mallory. We are safe because you stand with kindness." Hearing those words brought a quiet strength to Reed. He realized that caring about this family had become more than a momentary choice. It had become something rooted deeply inside him. Later that day, Reed showed Apache and Sori how to repair the roof of the small shed behind the cabin. The wind had loosened some shingles, and Reed wanted to fix them before the real winter storms arrived. Sori handed tools to Reed while Apache climbed a short ladder to help lay the new boards. "You're not afraid of heights?" Reed asked. Apache smiled lightly. "I climbed many trees when I was young. Height teaches balance." Reed chuckled softly. "Then you're better at this than I am." They all laughed together, and the simple moment felt warm and honest. As the sun set, painting the sky in soft orange and pink, the family gathered on the porch. Nalin wrapped her blanket gently around her shoulders. Apache leaned against the wooden rail, and Sori sat quietly with her hands folded in her lap. Reed stood beside them, taking in the endless land stretching out before them. The quiet moment felt complete, as if the land was accepting their presence. Apache spoke first. "It feels peaceful here," she said softly. Sori nodded. "Like we can breathe again." Reed looked at them, his heart settling into a gentle certainty. "Then stay," he said. "As long as you need. This place is big enough for all of us." Nalin's eyes glistened with gratitude, but her expression remained calm and dignified. "You open not only your door, Reed Mallory," she said with quiet emotion. "You open your heart too." Reed lowered his gaze slightly, touched by her words. He felt something shifting inside him, something he could not name yet, but something warm and steady. The night grew darker, and the stars appeared in the sky, bright and clear. The family and Reed sat together in peaceful silence, warmed by the fire in the cabin and by the growing trust that bound them together. The ranch, once quiet and lonely, now felt alive with hope. Reed didn't know what challenges might come tomorrow, But he knew one thing with certainty. He would face them with strength. Because this family had given him purpose, and he was ready to protect that purpose with all the kindness and courage within him. Reed woke up early the next morning, just as the sun began to rise over the quiet valley. A soft orange light touched the hills, and the air felt cool and calm. He stepped out onto the porch and took a long breath, letting the peaceful morning settle inside him. For the first time in many months, the ranch felt alive in a warm and gentle way. He could hear quiet movement from the kitchen where Sori was already starting the morning fire, and the soft sound of horses coming awake in the stable. It felt like a beginning of something new. Something he did not fully understand yet, but something he welcomed. A few minutes later, Nalin stepped outside, wrapped in a clean blanket Reed had given her. She looked stronger now, her back a little straighter, her face less tired. Her daughters followed her, both already ready for work. Reed noticed how naturally they all moved around the ranch now. It was as if the place itself had accepted them, just the way he had. They shared a simple breakfast inside warm bread, dried fruits, and tea. Reed listened as Nalin spoke softly to her daughters in their own language, her voice carrying a gentle melody. He couldn't understand the words, but he understood the feeling behind them. It was comfort. It was safety. It was peace returning after a long struggle. After breakfast, Reed and Apache walked to the stable to check on the horses. Apache had grown especially close to the wild mare she had calmed during their earlier days at the ranch. The mare now allowed her to brush her coat and walk beside her without fear. Reed admired the connection Apache had with the animals. It was something rare and special. She never forced, never hurried. She simply understood them. And somehow, they understood her. As they worked, Reed told her that a few neighbors had stopped by the day before. Some had expressed concern, but others had offered quiet support. Apache listened without speaking, her expression calm but thoughtful. Reed reassured her that he would stand by them no matter what. She looked at him with quiet gratitude, and although she said nothing, he felt that she understood his sincerity completely. Later that morning, Sori helped Reed organize the storage shed. As they worked, she shared stories about herbs her mother had used for years, leaves that healed cuts, roots that soothed stomach aches, and plants that helped calm a troubled mind. Reed listened with real interest. He realized how much he had to learn from them, and how much knowledge they carried that settlers often overlooked. Nalin spent the morning repairing an old blanket, skillfully weaving new threads into the worn fabric. She hummed softly while she worked, and the sound filled the small cabin with a peaceful rhythm. Reed found himself slowing down each time he passed by the doorway, drawn in by the calmness she brought to the place. Every part of the ranch seemed to carry new energy now. The horses moved with ease, the rooms felt warm, and Reed felt something he hadn't felt in years: companionship. Not the loud or busy kind, but the quiet kind that made a person feel safe and understood. In the afternoon, a wagon approached the ranch. Reed stepped outside, curious but calm. It was Mr. Clayton, one of the more respected settlers in the valley. Clayton climbed down with a friendly nod and approached the porch. Reed greeted him kindly, and the Apache family waited inside, unsure of what this visit meant. Clayton explained that he had heard whispers around town. Some people were questioning Reed's decision to shelter the Apache family, but others admired it. He said that a few settlers wanted to oppose the idea, but he himself felt that there was nothing wrong with helping people who needed it. Reed thanked him and invited him inside. Nalin greeted the visitor with calm dignity, and Clayton treated her with respect. They spoke for a while, and Reed noticed how Nalin chose her words carefully, always with grace. Clayton left with a better understanding of the family's situation, and Reed felt hopeful. Maybe the valley could accept them after all. Over the next few days, more settlers passed by, some curious, some cautious, some secretly supportive. Reed realized that change often came slowly, but it did come. And sometimes, all it needed was one brave step. Nalin grew stronger with each passing day. The warmth of the ranch, the regular meals, and the feeling of safety brought life back into her cheeks. Her daughters noticed the change too, and they smiled more often now. Sometimes Reed caught them laughing softly together, and the sound made the entire ranch feel brighter. One evening, Reed sat outside alone, watching the sun dip below the hills. The sky was painted with soft shades of gold and pink. He heard footsteps behind him, and turned to see Nalin slowly walking to join him. She sat beside him, her blanket wrapped around her shoulders. For a moment, they sat quietly, enjoying the peaceful view. "Your land is beautiful," she said gently. Reed nodded. "It feels a lot more beautiful since you and your daughters arrived." Nalin smiled, her eyes reflecting the warm evening light. "You have shown us kindness when no one else would. We will not forget it." Reed felt a deep sense of respect for her. "No one should be turned away when they need help," he said. "Not in a place like this." Nalin looked at him thoughtfully, and then nodded. "You have a strong heart. My daughters and I are grateful." All. The next morning, Reed rode to town to speak with the small council that managed local matters. He wanted to help Nalin and her daughters find a way to stay in the valley legally without fear of being forced to move again. Some council members were unsure at first, but Reed stood firm. He spoke with honesty and confidence about the family's character, their hard work, and their peaceful intentions. By the end of the meeting, the council agreed to allow the family to remain in the region under Reed's protection. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a safe and respectful beginning. Reed returned to the ranch with the news, and when he told Nalin, her eyes filled with soft relief. Apache smiled with genuine happiness, and Sori clapped her hands together in quiet joy. For the first time in a long time, they felt like they had a place where they truly belonged. From that day forward, the ranch began to change in small but meaningful ways. Apache taught Reed's horses new gentle techniques that made them calmer and easier to work with. Sori planted herbs near the cabin so she could grow the plants her mother used for healing. Nalin created beautiful beadwork that Reed helped sell in town, slowly building respect among the settlers. The ranch, once quiet and lonely, became a place filled with light, laughter, and cooperation. Reed no longer felt the weight of isolation. Instead, he felt a sense of purpose he had never known before. And the Apache family, once wandering without shelter, now moved through each day with dignity and safety. One evening, as the sky turned dark and stars began to appear, Nalin stepped onto the porch and looked out over the land. Reed stood beside her. She took a deep breath and exhaled slowly, filled with peace. "This time," she said softly, her voice steady and full of meaning, "someone did provide us shelter." Reed looked at her with quiet warmth. The words touched him deeply, not because they praised him, but because they showed how far they had all come. Together, they had created a new beginning, one built not on fear or division, but on kindness, trust, and understanding. The ranch was no longer just Reed's home. It had become their home, a safe place where hope could grow, and where people who had once been strangers could become something like family. And as the stars brightened in the calm night sky, the story of their shared journey continued, peaceful and strong, just like the land around them.